Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to this conversation all about boundaries. And the one boundary that you perhaps didn't even know you needed. And yet I would offer that it might just, hello, Janetta, welcome, be the most important one. The most important. And I can't wait to dive into this with you. So we'll give everybody a second to see, to join us. Ooh, hi, Mary. Hi, Nicole. All right, now I can see the comments. Okay. All the places. All right. Oh my goodness, boundaries. So let me ask, as we're allowing everybody to come in and get settled, maybe you have your lunch, maybe you have some tea. I've decided it's full on spring. It's not, it's actually super windy out, but, and pearls, still pearls for those of you that are paying attention. So what I would love to know before we dive in is, talk to me about boundaries. What are your, when you hear this word boundaries, what comes up for you? What thoughts do you have? What do you notice? You found me. Hi, Carol. Welcome. Mary says, having to multitask. I need to work on my boundaries, but I didn't want to admit. Yes, multitask away, right? Usually I tell you, focus, 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 remove the distractions, and real life, okay? Real life. I get it. Thank you. So I need to record a podcast episode about these. These are my great grandmother's pearls. They make me so happy. All right. So I'm seeing I need to set boundaries. So Janetta, tell me about why you need to set boundaries. What feels important to you about the idea of setting boundaries? Why does that feel important? You're all like, wait, this is a workshop. You're supposed to be talking. Why are you asking us questions? Because it's what I do. It's what I do. As you are putting your thoughts about the importance of boundaries into the comments, I want to introduce myself. Many of you I know already and I adore. You've been in my sphere for a while, but some of you haven't. And I'm going to introduce myself by way of a quick story that then I'm going to come back to. So one of the things that I implemented over this last year, thank you 2020 and 2021, was the realization that I needed to set up some morning time boundaries, that I needed to create a boundary around my morning schedule to not start working, meaning being forward facing on telephone calls, Zooms, clients, whatever it was, until after 10 a.m. so that I had plenty of time to get in my morning journaling, my meditation, maybe a workout, walking the dog, all the things that I know help me feel grounded and centered, right? And so when you hear this, you might be thinking, okay, so you implemented a boundary, you created a structure around saying no to anything that started before 10 a.m. And what I would offer you is perhaps that's what it's about. Perhaps it's not. And that's what we're diving into today. Who's ready? So I'm seeing Nicole, I'm working on setting boundaries with work, family, and side business to create more self-care time. Okay. Carol says, you lose yourself if you don't set boundaries. You can get caught up in the things that are not good for you. And Janetta, yes, because people will walk all over you if you don't put your foot down. Okay. Love these comments. All right. So you've heard my quick little snippet, little teaser of a story, right? That I created this boundary around not taking phone calls. And it's like an 80% boundary because there are a few phone calls that just have to happen before 10. But for the most part, where I can, I schedule things after 10. Right? So that tells you a few things about me in terms of what's important to me. My morning practice is super important to me. And I share that as a way to introduce myself to those of you that don't know me or haven't been around in this community for a while. First of all, welcome. Secondly, right, this is what I help women do. I help women feel more peace, more joy and more connection in their lives with what I think of as the sunrise in your pocket lifestyle, mindset, whatever, we're going to call it a thing. And this thing, this sunrise in your pocket, is built on kind of three pillars of being present, being curious and experiencing and cultivating wonder, right? And self-love. So I talk a lot about you don't need self-care, you need self-love. And the power of curiosity, the power of wonder, the power of delight. I kind of lump that in. And then how can you be present, right? So these kind of three pillars, these are the anchors, the structures, the boundaries, I guess, of my work. And so that being said, this idea of this one boundary that you may not even realize you need fits into being present. It fits into this idea of wonder. And it also, most importantly, I would say, fits into this idea of self-love, right? How do you, and I think Carol said this, a few of you said this, right? That this setting boundaries is actually an act of self-love. We're going to get into this today because I really want you to walk away with perhaps a different perspective on what boundaries are for and how to use them, right? That's my goal. That's my intention. I will also at the end save a few minutes for chatting about if you want to take this work further and really, really be able to prioritize this one boundary and also the others about the Thrive Circle, which starts next week. I'm so excited. This group of women that is assembling is just fabulous and it makes my heart burst. And that may be something that you're interested in, it may not be, but maybe it's interesting to hear about it. Okay, so boundaries, right? You've shared, some of you, this idea of not getting caught up in the things that aren't good for you, setting boundaries with work, family, and to create more self-care time, to creating boundaries so that people don't walk all over you, right? My question to you is, if you think about all of these boundaries, a lot of them have to do with saying no, right? We think of boundaries as creating structure. And oh, by the way, structure is good for us. Structure helps things continue moving. If you think about the river, the banks of a river, right? They're structure. They're also a boundary. And this actually just occurred to me. This works for all the boundaries we're going to talk about. So the structure that the riverbanks keep the water flowing. It creates a structure so that things can continue moving. It keeps the land, all the things that are outside of the water, out. But it also does something else. You might be starting to see where I'm going. Maybe not, but probably, because you're all very, very smart. So most of us think about boundaries in terms of what we want to keep out. Saying no, right? There is all of this talk around, like, say no more often. And yes, there's a place for saying no, right? There's also this idea of setting boundaries to protect yourself, right? So that you don't absorb people's energy. I talk about this a lot with my clients. Boundary hygiene is a conversation I love to have. Do any of you remember the book Harold and the Purple Crayon? Maybe I'm dating myself. But Harold and the Purple Crayon was a story about a little boy who had a purple crayon who drew his imaginary life, right? He would draw things and then kind of go into that life. I think about that book in terms of the purple crayon. I usually think about it as a gold crayon, even though I love purple is one of my favorite colors. And one of the boundary hygiene things I talk with my clients about is drawing a boundary along your entire body, right? Starting at one foot, going all around your toes, up one leg, down the other leg, around the other foot, up the leg, up the torso, the arm, all the things. That way, when you walk through your day, the stuff that isn't yours, you've created this energetic, nope, not mine, right? So we often think about boundaries in that sense, not mine. I don't need you. right? Which is a really important practice. It's really important to be able to discern what is yours and what isn't yours. And I'll give you another example that has helped me. Yeah, Rachel, I mean, I see purple crayons coming to the way of some Thrive circlers. Maybe gold, maybe gold. What do you think? So I'm going to give you an example of this type of boundary. So many of you know, I have a daughter who's 16 and over, well, she'll be 16 and a half in a few months. She starts behind the wheel training everybody today, which means that on her 7th lesson, she's going to get tested and then she's going to get her temporary license, as in she'll be able to drive herself anywhere. So exciting. Okay, I digress. Back to her dad and I have been divorced since she was 2.5. For the most part, historically speaking, we've had a very, very good relationship, very amicable, very collaborative. It's been very important to us. And pandemic time, real life, not so fabulous, right? In terms of how the interactions were going, differences of opinion about school, different things. Fear was really at the root of that. There came a point that I realized I needed to create a boundary to protect my energy because I was giving my energy away, okay? And so rather than always answering the phone, or if I got a text that said, hey, can you call me? I would wait. I inserted artificial time, a boundary, to say, nope, I'm gonna take that call, I'm gonna send that text when I feel filled up on me so that I don't absorb stuff that isn't mine, frustrations, fears, real as they might have been, okay? So that's an example of setting boundaries to keep things out. Yeah, are you with me? Hi, Shane. What questions do you have about those types of boundaries, the things that you keep out, the things that you say no to, or the ways that you protect your energy? Any questions or thoughts about that? Because I really want to take you on this journey to see how these different types of boundaries, and this one in particular that I'm going to get to in a second, I keep teasing it. I'm doing a really good job teasing it. I'm going to drink my tea. What questions do you have so far? No questions. Who is good at those types of boundaries? Oh, so I just read my little tea note. It felt important. And it said, the principal ingredient of life is love. I'm going to get back to that. Because yes, and it fits in quite beautifully to this conversation. Okay. So perhaps you are good. I know people that have created boundaries around when they engage with family members, right? When what you say yes to, what you say no to. I used to have a boundary around evening time, because in my brain, evening time was family dinner time. Family dinner time was sacred, and we were going to spend the evening together. And so I would say no to events or things, meetings. This is way back when Samantha was younger. And then all of a sudden I realized one day, I was like, wait a minute, this so-called family dinner, like, okay, we eat together. But then after, everybody scatters. She goes and does her homework, or she goes to do this, and Simon's doing this, and I'm doing that. We're not actually all together. So what if I prioritized the feeling, right? Creating those moments without being so structured on the time. Okay, so that's another little example of where we create boundaries. Sometimes we create them because our brain tells us to, and they may not actually be what's important. One of the things I've talked a lot about in the past, I've talked a lot about recently, but when we think about time often makes us think of boundaries, right? The example that I gave before, my morning time, that instead of prioritizing time, right, prioritizing the why, the purpose. And that's what leads me to this secret boundary that you may not even realize you need, and is, I think, perhaps the most important. Who's ready? Who has ideas? I would love to know, what do you think this boundary that I'm alluding to that actually isn't, you're going to be like, oh, really? What do you think that boundary might be? Take a moment and just think about, right? What might that boundary be about, given what you've heard me say so far? What do you think? Questions, questions. Friends, I can wait. I'm not going to, but I can. Okay, so we've talked about the boundaries of stuff that you keep out that isn't yours. Here's this. Rachel says, honoring core values. Mary says, keeping things in. It's like you have been hanging around me for any length of time. Oh, so here's the big reveal that isn't so big, right? Instead of focusing so much on what we want to keep out, what if we began to create boundaries, structure, space for what we want to keep in, right? It's that instead of thinking about what we want to push out, that so that it doesn't push in, it's literally what do we want to fill our space with? Maybe even so that it expands, right? And yes, keeping things flowing. Okay, let's go back to that water example. Perfect, Carol, right? Riverbank keeps the land out, but it keeps the water, which is the important part of the river, in. It keeps it flowing. And if you go back to my quick example that I gave about my morning practice, you might think that my 10 a.m. is not letting things creep, right? Keeping those things out. But really, that boundary, that structure came from realizing how important that time, and really more than the time, those practices were for me. So it's less about the time, because here's what's funny. Actually, on the days where I have a whole lot of time, I have a harder time creating, really dialing into some of those practices. I have to be more intentional. On the days where I feel like I have less time, I'm more intentional, I'm more focused because I know they're important to me. So that 10 a.m. Meeting boundary structure came from the realization of what I wanted to create more space for, which was me sitting and listening and being, and even having time actually to spend 5-10 minutes with Samantha while she's eating breakfast, right? Which inevitably ends up being like during a meditation or during something. But this idea of noticing, what do I want to create space for? Not what do I not want to have? Do you see the difference? And this might seem like semantics, and it kind of is. And yet, I would offer that we approach our day, ourselves, our lives with much more self-love, much more presence, and much more curiosity when we start creating space for what we want to keep in. Right? Even energetically, you might notice in your body, if you're thinking about the stuff you want to keep out, you get defensive, right? It's like we have to put on armor. I think Janetta said it before, right? It's you have to put your foot down. Yeah. And, right? If you come from this perspective of, but what am I creating space for that I want to allow, that I want to flow, that is a much more peaceful, more intentional, more proactive instead of reactive approach. Does that make sense? So this idea of what you want to keep in, right? That can look like a lot of different things. Rachel mentioned core values. Core values work is one of my favorite explorations. I think it's one of the most important explorations to get to know who you are and to prioritize your wants and needs. It is perhaps the most important part of one of kind of the first pieces, processes that I work with my clients. In the Thrive Circle coming up, this is what we spend the first few weeks on, really talking about creating space for getting to know what makes you you. And I would offer that you kind of need to know what makes you you and what helps you be, not who you used to be, but the optimized version 2.0, version 3.0, whatever version you're on, right? Imagine you have a book and you're turning to the new chapter, that version of you, the version of you that's here right now, optimizing that. We need to know what helps us, right? So for me, one of those things is tapping into curiosity and delight every single day. It's why I've been wearing these pearls every day since, actually it's been more than March, since almost the end of February, before the end of February, because they connect me to my great-grandmother. They help me feel alive because I know I've been reading up on this idea that pearls need to be worn to continue to have their luster, right? And so it's this living, breathing reminder of being alive. And it also just feels delightful to have a little bling on my neck, right? And so that's me creating space for what's important. It's kind of like a boundary, right? Boundaries at the end of the day are structures. They could be practices. And so your core values will help. Do you need to know your core values to create space, to create this boundary for what you want to keep in? No. Will your boundaries be stronger and more effective? Absolutely. Right? So core values, yes. Creating space for those, to nurture them, to be nourished by them, all of those things. But also just this simple idea of, how do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel before a meeting? How do I want to feel before a workout? How do I want to feel, or after a workout, right? How do I want to feel after, whatever it is? Thinking about that feeling and then deciding, ooh, Nicole, I want to know why. Tell me, give me more, say more, tell me what's speaking to you about it. But this idea of, okay, so if I know how I want to feel, I literally have to create space to feel this. Because if we don't create space, if we're just going bulldozing through, there's no room to feel the way we want to feel. So you almost have to, it's like thinking about giving this feeling that you want to feel and giving what you want to keep in real estate. Right? So let's all buy some real estate in our lives, in our hearts. And literally, so instead of Harold, I'm going to go back to Harold and the Purple Crayon, right? Imagine that we drew that line like an inch away, right? So here's my hand. So instead of really tracing the contours of my hand, what if I drew it like this? My inch just got bigger. Right? And I think about that space as the room for what I want to keep in. Okay. It moves with us. We get to decide where we want things to expand, where we want things to contract. Nicole says, I'm always concerned with how other people feel and not how you want to feel. Yes. Okay. So that's the other power of this, is if you think about the old boundaries of what you want to keep out, that is based on others. This focuses on you. And here's the good and bad news. The only person who you can control and who you can choose, right, is you. We can try to train our families, our friends, our people. I mean, doesn't always work. Okay, and how we react to them is kind of up to us. So this puts the energy back on you. One of the questions I've been playing a lot with over the last few months is, how much time, energy, and effort do you want to give to X, right? A feeling, a thought, or whatever. And oftentimes that has to do with other people. Right? With other people's expectations, with other people's shoulds, with guilt, with comparison, whatever it is. That same question can be directed towards ourselves. How much time, energy, and effort do I want to give to feeling X? And that's the space we create for it. from ourselves, right? So I listened to meditation recently. Hi, Karen. Yes, right? I see there's lots of yeses to Nicole saying, always being concerned how others feel and not how you want to feel. Absolutely. Right. So this meditation, and actually I led this meditation last week at the retreat, right? At the Awaken Your Aliveness retreat. And it's a meditation to think about what you want to be steeped in, what quality of life, what emotion, what feeling do you want to be infused with? And for me right now, that feeling is a sense of wonder. Right. And I talk a lot about delight. Delight is a part of wonder for me, but wonder is even just a little bit bigger. And because wonder is both curiosity and it's delight. Hi, Christina. Good morning. Glad you're here. So say hi to some of your retreat friends. Those of you retreat friends, Thrive Circlers, say hello to one another. So if I think about this feeling of wonder, I have to intentionally create space for it. It doesn't just magically appear with like a sign that says wonder here, right? I have to be on the lookout for it. And so I've created boundaries to keep wonder in my schedule, right? With how I structure my mornings, but also lately in how I structure my evenings. I go to bed early and I read. Oh, my retreat friends. You're going to be seeing a lot of these friends every week, Karen. I'm just saying. So I actually track my wonder. So in my Thrive journal, this is going to look like a mess, so close your eyes. But I have in my Thrive journal 3 things that I focus on each month, and one of them is wonder and delight. So I track, right, every day, where did I notice wonder? How did I tap into wonder? It is something that I have to intentionally create space for, or else my life is busy, as we all are, right? And we focus on what everybody else thinks. So one of the ways to create space is to think about how you want to feel, right? So with core values, yes. And this is something that if you want, really the best way to get to know your core values is to join us in the Thrive Circle. I can't say it any better than that, because we spend a lot of time there and we build, everything becomes built on that. And that's not to scare any of you off. But I've already been like, I'm in. It's fabulous, I promise. But it's so enlightening to figure out what your core values are. So core values help you. Knowing what feeling, quality of life, emotion you want to be infused with, that can be a doorway in. This is about creating space. So then you think about what the Christina says, yay, can't wait. I'm so glad. How do you create space? Right? Sometimes it's just with your intention, being purposeful, right? Deciding I'm going to be on the lookout for this. That is a boundary. We don't think about it as a boundary, but literally deciding if you are a magnet, okay? So this is why it's important to know what you're creating space for, what you're allowing in. You can pretend you're a magnet, right? So if you're allowing it in, you're going to attract it, but you kind of have to be on the lookout, right? To be able to recognize it so that even when it's coming towards you, you can, because it's one thing to create space for it. It's another thing to actually receive it and absorb it. Does that make sense? We're not always good at the receiving and the absorbing. We see it, we're like, oh, there it is. And then when I ask you about it 2 days later, you can't remember because you were moving really fast, right? So you didn't take time to pause and be with it. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's just recap, right? We've talked about the boundaries that keep things out, right? The boundaries that say no, the boundaries that keep out other people's energy. And then we moved into thinking about what if this was about what you wanted to keep in, what you wanted to create more space for. So for example, those of you that really resonated with, I think what Nicole said about, being not really thinking about your feelings, always thinking about other people's feelings, take a moment to consider. So if you were going to focus on your feeling, and some of you know your core values, I'm not going to call you out, but some of you know your core values. If you wanted, and play with picking one thing to start, right? This is not about doing all the things. Okay, play with picking one thing that you want to create space for. It could be a feeling, it could be an emotion, right? Just give yourself a moment to let that thing bubble up. What is that one thing? And then put it in the comments, because I want to play. I want to give you ways, specific ways to play with this. So who's got a way, something that they want to keep in, a feeling that they want to cultivate? Joy. Okay. So, Carol, right? If you think about whether you're drawing that line, okay, or creating space for it in your heart, peace, more joy, okay? The first way to keep it in is to practice feeling it, no matter where you are. Now, you might say to me, but I don't feel joy right now, or peace. So if you don't, you have some options: serenity, excitement, enthusiasm. Okay, hi Arietta, it's good to see you. Confidence. So take that feeling that you want to feel more of. Maybe you can tap into it right now where you're sitting. Energy, okay. Maybe though, you're like, yeah, this moment doesn't really feel like that. Though I'm hoping that this moment does feel like a lot of excitement and all the things, but I can't tell you how to feel. If you don't feel that way in this moment, think about a time recently, and you get to define recently, where you have felt that, or where you have witnessed it in someone or something else. Now that gets a little trickier because we're not people watching as much as we used to, right? But maybe you were reading a book or watching a show and saw something that looked energetic or looked enthusiastic or looked like serenity, right? This is about practicing feeling it. That is the first way to create space for what you want to keep in. There is an opportunity to know what it feels like and to give it to yourself, even if that's from outside and you're just kind of tapping in. So one of the things when I play with my meditations, right, when I kind of sit, and I usually ground into this first thing in the morning. Love is something that helps me access wonder, right? So one of the things that I go back to, and I can put myself back there like this, is when I picked up my parents at Washington Dulles International Airport last October, after they had been in Italy for 10 months, right? Kind of stuck there. I know it's a tough thing, but during the pandemic, them being in Italy at over 70 was scary for me. I don't know. I think for them at the beginning, and then they were like, they're over it. But my dad's hug, I can put myself back into that feeling, and it wraps me with love and wonder. And Christina says, I witness my joys. I witness my sons having joy every day. Yes, right? So it's about putting yourself back into a moment and kind of letting yourself steep there, be infused with that feeling, right? I feel bad for anybody that's ever on a call with me right now, because I wish I could show you. I have to take a picture. They're beautiful. I have wanted forsythias in my garden. I actually don't know for how long, but the moment I realized 2 years ago that I wanted them, it's all I could think about. And as my husband said to me, forsythias only bloom yellow for a very short period of time. Like, I know, but I don't care. I want that burst of yellow. I can see them in two places. That to me fills me with wonder. That bright yellow in the two corners of my yard that I can see when I turn my head like this, my heart just expands, and that is wonder. When I look out and I see a bird at the bird feeder, right? I've never considered myself a birder, but that's the other thing that I get distracted by. If my computer is over here, it's kind of why I've shifted my computer here so that I don't get quite as distracted, unless I'm choosing to be. But that fills me with wonder, right? So we practice noticing and feeling. That's the first step. If that's all you do, that is a really fabulous way to start creating that boundary. And some of you are going to say to me, but Elena, this isn't a boundary. It absolutely is a boundary. I'm going to lay a stake in this. You are creating space. You are creating a structure for giving yourself permission to feel how you want to feel. And that is necessary for feeling more peace, more joy, more connection, right? You have to know how you want to feel and then intentionally prioritize that. So practicing, knowing, naming how you want to feel, practicing feeling it, right? And then thinking about how might you be intentional, right? So we had, I'm looking back, energy, enthusiasm, serenity. It's not showing me all the comments, that's okay. What else? Joy, peace, right? So I would love to know from you all, right? Can you take a moment? Do you have an example of a time where you have felt this recently? Yes, Mary, right? Knowing how you want to feel and prioritizing it. You, my friend, are really good at this right now. Probably you have been, but you are totally doing this. You are creating space, literally and figuratively, in your life for what you want to feel more of, right? So, and now, this can be this practicing of steeping. It could be creating a boundary, a structure of a practice, right? So my morning practice gives me that opportunity to allow in what I want to feel, to start my day with that. Now, here's the important thing, right? When we set this intention to create space and set a boundary for what we want to keep in, it takes continued effort and practice. This isn't a one and done, a switch that you turn on and then stays magically on, right? I would invite you to consider that this is a daily choosing to say, I'm going to allow this in today, right? I'm going to be on the lookout for this. I'm going to give myself permission to feel this. So there's this, and you might think, but isn't that also just keeping the other stuff out? And it kind of is, except it makes me feel different energetically when I think about what I'm creating space for, what I'm allowing in. I would much rather be infused with that intention instead of all the stuff I'm pushing away. Because if I spend my day thinking about all the stuff I'm pushing away, guess what? I'm doing a lot. I'm pushing a lot of things away. And it's a slight tweak, right? It's kind of that difference between I have to and I get to. But to me, it's an important tweak. Because if I think about even, things with, for instance, my daughter, right? And wanting to feel that connection. She's 16 and a half, right? I'll be honest. The fact that she still wants to cuddle and be with me makes my heart burst. But there are days where she gets really annoyed with me because she thinks I'm always on my phone, and she's not wrong, right? If I'm being totally honest. And so I've had to really practice, and it's still a work in progress, right? In those moments of just being with her, I want to allow that feeling in. And so, yes, that means I have to put other things down. I have to create a boundary that says, okay, I'm not going to be available for my phone right now. but really it comes from the what I want to keep in. And that to me is a different way of looking at it than the other way around. Some of you have heard me talk about, I just lost my train of thought. Let me drink my tea and see if it comes back. It's the difference between something, and it will come back to me. If you are reading my brain, you can put it in the comments if you know. But it's not dissimilar to, this sense of, okay, yes, I'm going to say no to that, but I'm saying no to it because of this, because this is what's important. Oh, yes. Attunement rather than doing, right? Being rather than doing. I don't tell people not to do stuff because we kind of have to do stuff out in the world. But when you set goals based on outcomes, that puts you into a certain perspective. When you set a goal based on a feeling, based on how you want to feel, and then the doing comes from that, I would invite you to consider that that's a very different place, and it's rooted in a deeper sense of why. Shane says, my kids have called me out for being on my phone too much. And they're right? Like, yes. I mean, she's 100% right. I'm on my phone way too much. I should apologize in advance to those of you that are in the Thrive Circle who suddenly, I'm going to start putting my phone down. No, it's not going to happen. Anyway, right? Yes, that's a fabulous example. So let's use this example of the phones in our hands, right? We can set a boundary around not so much technology, right? I have actually, so I have rules for myself. They're written into one of my journals about what it means to be a perpetually delighted CEO. I laugh, right? And I have email boundaries. I'm only going to check email twice a day. No, 3 times a day. Beginning of the morning, beginning of the afternoon, end of the day. I'm only, some of you have emailed me. How good do I stick to those boundaries? Let's say 10% of the time, and that's being kind, right? I'm not good, but here's why I'm not good at sticking to those boundaries. Because those boundaries feel like shoulds. Because they are arbitrary and they're about keeping things out. When I, on the other hand, create a boundary based on what I want to keep in. So for instance, let's use this example of spending time with my teenager. I'm wanting to feel that connection to her. That fills me up with love. It doesn't deplete me right away. I am much more apt to follow through, right? Janetta, can you share this on your page? So yes, but it won't let you share it from here. What I'm going to be doing is, am I recording it? I am recording it. I will be putting this on my YouTube as a link when we're done, and you can share that. And because you're on my email list, you'll be getting that link this afternoon. And so you'll be able to share that. I would be delighted if you shared that. Thank you for asking. Yes, because of the privacy settings in the group, we can't share directly from here, but that's the way to share it. So, and it'll just be the video, it won't be your comments. Okay. But you'll hear me talking to you all. So does that make sense, right? It's very different when we think about the stuff we want to keep. And this is me, right? I am somebody who creates habits and does things when I feel like they're purposeful, not because they're rooted in shoulds or somebody else's expectations. That's the number one way to get me to not do something. If you tell me I have to because you want me to. It's not exactly true, but I have to see value in it. It has to be aligned with my core values, back to core values, right? And when it is, when I see the purpose of it, when I see how that helps me, and this might sound really selfish, but to some degree, being version 2.0, 3.0, 5.0 of you, showing up as your truest self, that's self-love. It's not selfish. And you are going to be, I'll use me, I am better equipped to be a better mom, a better wife, when I lead with those things that help me align myself to me first, right? You could look occasionally at my family schedule and be like, oh my gosh, You are one selfish, right? Because I tell my family what time we have to eat dinner based on my workouts, based on whether or not I'm teaching yin or leading a Thrive Circle that night or whatever it is. And my family goes along with it. But guess what? They go along with it because they realize that if I say I have to get a workout in at 4:30 because I didn't get one in earlier, they know that it is important for me, not just in my body, but in my brain and in my heart, right? And so when we think about how we enable people, there's a negative connotation, right? You've enabled that behavior. I have enabled them to help me enable me. And so again, this idea of a boundary around creating the structures that help you keep what's most important in and to create more space for that ultimately creates ripples with everybody around us. Now, it might take some getting used to for them. So this is where you start small and you start it just for you, right? These are the things that can be even internal. Let's see. Yes, right, Nicole, Rachel, I'm so glad, right? Because there's this idea, and we think we should feel guilty for creating time and space, for prioritizing us. But when you start to look at boundaries as keeping the good stuff in, one of my intentions or mantras or affirmations, I call them all sorts of different things, is I feed my body, heart, and soul with the good stuff. Right? So it's nurturing and nourishing. Yes, food, and yes, water, and yes, movement, but also my practices, also the wonder and delight in going outside to enjoy the forsythia. I will take a picture later because it's it's even more yellow than it was yesterday. Okay, I'll stop. Right? So when we fill up on that, we have the opportunity to choose to be the best version of ourselves in any given moment. And why would we feel guilty about that? If we get to show up as the best version of ourselves with more peace, with more joy, with more connection to ourselves first, and then to everybody around us, why would we feel guilty about that? We feel guilty about it because we think that that comes at the expense of those people around us. And yet, what I'm here to tell you is that this actually empowers you when you start creating this boundary for what you want, not just creating, but honoring and cultivating and prioritizing this boundary of what you want to keep in. It pushes out in a way that's positive for everybody. It creates positive ripples. Yeah. So I would love to know what questions you have. And I'm going to challenge you to think about, a lot of you shared the feeling that you want to be permeated with, steeped with, infused with. I'm going to challenge you to think about what is one way that you can create space to allow that in today. It's 12:50. You still have time. It doesn't have to be a long thing. It may not even be something that takes time. It's just something that you play with in your heart and in your brain. But what is one thing that you could explore today to create, to allow how you want to feel in? Share that in the comments, right? Because this is where we play with it. Right? So we can talk about this. It sounds really fabulous and you can be inspired. But the important piece is going out and playing, experimenting, and then checking back in, right? Ask questions. Tell us how it went, right? If you're thinking, oh, I did this, but I kind of got into keeping stuff out, right? You might have to play a little bit and you might notice that there's a very fine line. This is the hard part. Christina, what if it didn't have to be hard? Right? So, yes, and I love you saying that. This is part of this exploration. Thinking of it as hard is the old story. Yes, it is going to take practice and effort to create space for what you want to allow in. But remember, these are little micro things. You already said watching your sons play fills you with joy, right? They are joyful. So what if you, for instance, intentionally prioritized watching them play and feeling the joy of it? That doesn't add to your to-do list because you're already around. It just means maybe not multitasking. But I'm not talking for 10, 15 minutes. It could be for 2 minutes. Ooh, Harrietta, you just said one of my favorite things, right? Creating a playlist of music that makes you feel excited. Pick one per day. Absolutely. Some of you know, right? Dance breaks, they happen a lot around here. They're not even a break. I literally dance in my chair. You could do that after the work and before they go to bed. Yes. Janetta, reading a good book. Yes. So yesterday, I had about 45 minutes before I had a call. I had done my practices. I hadn't worked out. I was going to work out in the evening. And I decided I spent 30 minutes reading intentionally. You've never done that. Making the playlist, Harrietta? Oh, or just, so if anybody wants, I have a whole lot of playlists based on different feelings on my Spotify. You just follow me, look for me with my name, Elena Sanino, and you'll see them. The one that I've been listening to a lot lately is called Unleashed. They're kind of wackadoodle, random. There's Depeche Mode, there's Lady Gaga, there's all sorts of randomness on there. And even Donna Summers, I think, is on there. I mean, I kind of love that playlist. So yes, okay. So I want to share with you, if this sounds intriguing to you, but you're thinking this is hard, I don't know how I can, dancing in your wheelchair. Yes, Janetta. Oh my gosh. Oh, right. Like that brings me joy just thinking about you doing that. I love Lady Gaga and Maroon 5, right? Yes. So if you're thinking, but I don't know how I'm going to keep this up. This all sounds good, but right? How do I make this sustainable? How do I do this on a regular basis? How do I take these things and actually not just have them be one thing that I thought about and then didn't keep up with, right? Because how many of us say that? And if you want to feel more peace, joy, and connection in your life, this is my invitation to you. I'm looking directly at you. The Thrive Circle starts on Tuesday. It's an amazing 7-week exploration, 12 weeks if you want to go in for the VIP, which is pretty awesome as well. I'm not gonna lie. We can talk about what the difference is, but 7 weeks, we meet every Tuesday. I can tell you all the features, all the things, right? But this is a time where you literally create space for what you want to allow in. It goes on your calendar and you show up for it every single week in a community of incredible women, many of who are in this thread. So if you're in this thread, all the high fives right now. I'm not going to call you out, but I might. And the reason that the community is so important is it's one thing for me to offer things, but when you are then in a community and feeling connected to other incredible souls who have their own stories, but see you in ways that perhaps you haven't been giving yourself permission to see yourself, there is beauty and magic in that. We get ideas from one another. When you hear somebody will share something and I'll ask them questions about it, right? It's like little mini hot seat coaching. And then somebody else has this experience of, oh, I never thought of it that way, right? And then you go try it. And I mean, the beauty of these 7 weeks is that every single week we use a Thrive journal as a resource, but there's always a mind-body practice to get you out of your head. Because let's be honest, one of the reasons we get so stuck in thinking about what everybody else thinks and not thinking about how we want to feel is because we're in our head. So we get into our bodies in little short things, right? Maybe with just a breath practice, maybe in a yin yoga shape. Carol Yes, check it out. Oh, absolutely. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll send you the link. It is an experience that will change how you see yourself. You will get to know who you are, what makes you you, your needs and wants. You will get to know how to feel more present, more curious, more self-love. And you will feel more peace, joy, and connection as you go. Not just at the end, but my intention is as you go and giving you the tools, you can tap into that every single day. This is your nudge. We start on Tuesday. I'm going to the post office this afternoon to mail a few journals. Janetta, you're always in your head, right? I mean, I am too. And here's the thing. It's not about never being in your head, but it's about having the tools in your toolbox to notice where that is keeping you stuck and getting you back into your body on a regular basis. So I'm going to the post office this afternoon to mail a bunch of Thrive journals to new participants so that they have them by Tuesday. I can still get it to you by Tuesday, and even if you get it on Wednesday or later in the week, that's okay. But I really want you to have this for when we begin. So if this is of interest to you, my nudge is put a note in the comments. I will reach out, or go to my website, elenasanino.com/Thrive Circle. You'll see all the information there. You have to register. Though one note, I realized the registration page was a little wonky. You really need to be intentional about clicking your choice. You can pay in full, you can pay monthly. You just have to be intentional and add it to the cart and make sure that the total isn't 0, or else your credit card charges you 0. User error on my part. So just be intentional about that. If you have questions, if you're not sure if this is right for you, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. I will call you. We will chat. We'll see, because it may be, it may not be. But if this is of interest, don't wait till the last minute. I know some of you like to wait till the last minute, and you can, but don't. Because if your heart already knows what you want to create space for and allow in, and this feels delicious and delightful, let's celebrate that. All right, that's all I'm going to say. So if this is of interest to you, I'm going to put it in the comments right now, the link. I'm going to make it that easy for you. How is that for fun? Oh, can I do this? I think I can do it. All right, here it is in the comments, the link to learn more. And for those friends that are already in the Thrive Circle, I cannot wait to begin with you. Cannot wait. All right, let me see. Are there any questions, any thoughts, anything you'd like to know more about? What is one takeaway that you have from today? Is my question to you. What is a takeaway that you have from this session? I can't wait to hear how this exploration goes for you. I heard, so let's see, we've got playlists, there's going to be dancing, there's going to be reading books, there's going to be watching kids. I want to hear about all these things. So you're going to putting your feelings first. Okay, I love it, Nicole. Yes to that, 100%. Okay. Practicing the feeling you want. I love that. It's so powerful. We don't think about it. We think, you know, and here's one more thing that I want to say about this. Your brain doesn't actually know the difference between a real memory of something that's actually happened and one that you just feel in your body that you can like absorb and steep in. It's why visualizing is so powerful, and why, you know, celebrities and athletes and all these people spend so much time visualizing, mentally rehearsing things. So when you practice feeling in your brain, you are creating pathways. Carol, you love this new way of thinking about boundaries. You're going to go out and be in nature today. Oh, how necessary joining this was for you. Oh, Karen, that makes my heart burst. I have a package coming to you this afternoon on your doorstep. Get excited. Okay. Yes, practicing the feeling you want. I am so excited to hear how this goes, everybody. It was such a delight to get to spend this Friday afternoon with you. Let me know if you have questions, if you have thoughts. Come back, follow up, let us know how it goes in this thread. Create your own thread, share your playlist, share your books, take pictures of being out in nature. Let's create new boundaries together of what we want to allow in. How fabulous would it be to create that ripple from inside us that goes out? That's what my work is really about. It's always my hope that that's what happens. Have a fabulous rest of the day. Let me know if you have questions. If you're curious about the Thrive Circle, I'm here. Let's chat. We start on Tuesday. Those of you that are already in, I cannot wait. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.